stay connected everywhere you go. Fitchburg is on your phone and your tablet and your laptop and TV. Download the app. It's free. Access Fitchburg. This is your city at your fingertips.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're your hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every weekday, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can find all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on-demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues affecting you and your neighbors.
Good evening, everyone. It is June 11th, 2026, and this is the monthly meeting of Fitchburg's Transportation and Transit Commission. I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:30. Note that all the commissioners are here except Alder Gerhardt, who is absent with excuse. We have no members of the public in the room and also online, right, Ross?
Nope.
Okay.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So first order of business then is the approval of the minutes of our last meeting of May 14th.
I will move approval with gratitude to whoever had to take the notes on item 4 and figure out our back and forth about the chair.
That was good. Yep.
Second. Dina.
Yes. Thank you, Dina. Any discussion? Looked good to me. All right. All in favor of accepting as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? That was unanimous. Thank you, Dina. To our agenda. Staff report.
All right, so I'm going to go through a bunch of projects because we have a lot of
Construction
stuff coming up on projects, and then I'll get into some more kind of traffic and like planning related stuff. So 2026 street resurfacing, we're going to be starting in June. They were going to start this week. The rain has held them off, but they did get done some saw cutting of the curb, which they start with on that project. Starting on Research Park, Specht, Petersburg Circle, Merlin Street, Ryland Street, then into Hillside Heights and the Tower Hill neighborhoods.
One contractor doing it all.
Yep, Payne and Dolan. They've been, the entire time I've worked with the city, they've gotten our contract every year, so. 2026 sidewalk replacement, we had to rebid that project because we got no bids the first time, but we got several bids the second time when we said, hey, why didn't you bid? And they said, we didn't feel like it. We said, would you please bid? That's literally basically what happened. Duluth Concrete was a little bidder, so basically $223,000 for that whole contract. That's more than we normally budget for that project, but this is in a high assessment area, a lot of commercial where we assess all of the sidewalk that needs to be replaced. So, Fitzgerald Road reconstruction, we are continuing to coordinate with the Wisconsin DNR to switch our soil nail wall into a soldier pile wall. Basically the soil nails go back into a slope, soldier piles go down into the ground below the wall. So they just hold the ground behind them up in different ways. And then we are negotiating a contract for construction inspection and a soldier pile wall design with KL. That contract right now is at right around $400,000. It will probably be more than that when we add in the retaining wall design.
Is that for both retaining walls?
That is only for the retaining wall under the Military Ridge State Trail Bridge. So under the 18151 bridges, it will be a soil nail wall.
Okay.
But the issue with the DNR under their bridge is they don't want the nails going back into their property. So that's the issue there. We received kind of verbal approval from the DNR almost 18 months ago on the soil nail wall, and then when we actually went to get the permit from them, they changed their minds, basically. So that's where we're at.
On that project, are we still hoping for a start this year?
Yes, but I'm not optimistic about it. We might get it bid this year, and maybe we get some clearing and grubbing done, but it's the majority of construction will be 2027.
But the utilities are happening now.
The utilities have paused due to some real estate issues that we're working through. But hopefully we get those resolved in the next week or two, and the utilities get their stuff moved this year. So they mowed to the site. There's a bunch of work trailers and rolls of fiber optic line out there. So they're on site, but they've stopped work for the moment. Anything else on Fitchburg? BRT, the risk workshop was a couple of weeks ago. That was with the Federal Transit Administration and the project management oversight contractor, and then also obviously myself, Metro Transit, and Madison Public Works were all there. There's no major action items out of that workshop for Fitchburg. A lot of them are with Madison and railroad kind of issues. So Madison's working through those, and all we're working on in Fitchburg right now is the southern charger. That location, we have to do a little bit of real estate stuff, but that's going pretty well. So. Bike and pedestrian underpass, we expect preliminary plans from MSA in June. Wayland Road paved shoulders, we bid that project last week. Payne and Dolan is the low bidder, $737,000. Our estimate was $750,000, so we're pretty happy with that. They're gonna get started this year and finish this year. I've reviewed the No Oaks Ranch and Bowman Plaza traffic impact analyses, and then Jamestown Quarry, one of our other developments, is close to completing the construction. They'll be switching over from the temporary signals to their permanent signals, hopefully next week.
And is Fitchburg Road in that neighborhood open yet?
Yes, it's been open for 2 weeks, I think.
Haven't been up there.
Traffic and safety type stuff. We installed a yield sign at Longwood and Kirkwall, which was previously uncontrolled T intersection. That's in the Dolly neighborhood. And we will be installing yield signs at Newtone and Old Oak. That was another uncontrolled four-way intersection. We've been adding yield signs at uncontrolled intersections just based on resident feedback. I also reviewed modifications to the Greenway and Coho roundabout, and I'm gonna look to basically put in paint splitter islands and curb bump outs there. So we basically set up some cones in the form of splitter islands and try to do our turning motions with a plow truck and a Metro bus. Didn't work very well, so that's why we're going with paint instead of a raised like cone or bump. So.
And in the future, if the road is resurfaced, there would be a possibility of texture but not curbs?
Yes. So we would probably look at a similar design as the one at Eggman on Greenway, which is a rollover curb, and trucks can go over the top of the center island.
Truck apron.
Yep.
The kind of texture I was talking about was the kind that's on Lacey here by the left, for the left turn lanes, that it's just red concrete or something.
Okay.
But it's flush.
Right. Yeah, we might consider that, but it hasn't.
Long time.
Yeah. And then also Country Rose Court, we're gonna paint some curb paint, some yellow curb paint up there. There's some carriage walks that kids use to get, they're private, they're not Fitchburg's, but we wanna kinda restrict parking, so kids going across to the park up there can be seen.
Where's that again?
Country Rose Court in Southdale.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If I just said rose quartz, and
That sounds
we have
good.
one of those
Yeah.
too.
And then Logan was talking about it before the meeting, but the RRFB on Syene that got hit a couple of years ago, right at the Swan Creek Park, that has been reinstalled and that works finally.
That was all supply chain stuff, right?
That was a contractor being difficult to deal with. We can get RRFBs much faster than that generally.
That's what I thought.
The Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, RFP, is on track for approval in July. I'm working on that now. That will come before this commission, just for kind of review. And then our intern started work last week, so he's been working on the TIA guidelines. He did a bunch of kind of sanity checks on that, and traffic counts, inventories, a whole bunch of other random tasks we do during the summer. So, yeah, that's my staff report.
Questions for staff?
I have one. Do you have kind of a top level summary of what the No Oaks TIA ended up with as far as whether it justified signals at Lacey and 14 or
Yes.
and Lacey
So-
and Central Park?
Yep, Lacey and Central Park will either be a signal or roundabout. Lacey and 14 will be signalized on both of those ramps. And then MM and Lacey needs turn lane improvements and signal timing modifications. So we're working through cost share for those signals, especially at 14, because all three of those developments around there, No Oaks, Osborne, and Syncopation, all contribute a lot of traffic to those interchanges. So it's not fair to just make No Oaks pay for those signals, or just the city pay for those signals. So we're working through that with the developers and administration. So, yeah.
Right. Is that something you think would happen in the next year or two, or like does it happen before the development starts or as the development gets?
It will happen most likely as they're building out No Oaks, because it is needed when No Oaks goes online, or before No Oaks goes online.
And they'll have all the construction staging,
Mhm.
everything they need will be there. In
Right.
terms of construction.
Yeah, there are already conduits under those ramps, so really it's a lot simpler project than if we had to dig conduit or drill conduit under the ramps. So we just basically have to pull wire, stand up signals, and repaint some stuff. So,
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Is WISDOT involved with that?
yes,
They
they're their
approve
ramps.
everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a city-run project most likely, with WISDOT's approval, and then the developers will all have a certain percentage that they'll pay, I think is the most likely outcome there. So. Anything else?
Okay. Resolution R-113-26. I'll start with a staff report.
All right, so all of this wording came from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. They support this resolution, and so does Fitchburg staff. Basically, this resolution is a resolution of support for more transportation dollars from the federal government being passed through the state to municipalities rather than being used by the state and not passed through to municipalities. So we've seen a decline in local road quality, falling from a 6.6 on a 10-point scale to 6.2 on a 10-point scale over 13 years. That's in the state of Wisconsin, and the share of local roads rated as excellent or very good fell by 9.5%. From 2000 to 2025, consumer price index increased by 90.7%, but the general transportation aids given from the state to municipalities only increased by 60.4%. And then Wisconsin cities and villages maintain 20% of the state's local roads, and 40% of traffic takes place on these roads. So cities and villages are taking a higher share of traffic. And if approved, this resolution will be forwarded to the governor and state legislature, as well as the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, to show Fitchburg's support for this funding solution. So, other stuff, if you hear about the Basics Act, that's basically what this is. The Basics Act is the law at the federal level. Yep. And that may or may not be the final name of it when it gets to the federal level. And in Wisconsin, or for Fitchburg, the mechanism that will see this take effect is the MPO will get more money from the state, which will then be passed through MPO programs to Fitchburg and the other MPO members. So,
I editorialized around the time of the referendum that our long-term solution is the legislature over the last decade and a half has been focused on tax cuts instead of the traditional collecting taxes on economic activity, that's sales and income, and distributing it to local governments and schools where it's needed, where they are not by statute allowed to collect enough taxes. So I think that this is a great step in the right direction. Other discussion?
Are we supposed to have a motion first or discuss?
Oh yes, let's have a motion. Would you like to make that motion?
Sure, I'll move to approve.
Recommend approval. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Maggie. All right.
Yeah, now I have a question.
Yes, go.
Thank you for the overview, because it wasn't in here, and that was helpful to understand the context of why we have this in front of us. What you read.
you have the referral sheet, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I was just picking and choosing sentences
I
off the
see.
referral
Okay.
sheet.
Okay, thank you. That, is it, maybe I should look at this again. Is it that the federal government is funding the states at an appropriate level, but the state of Wisconsin is not passing that money through? Or is it that the state of Wisconsin is collecting revenues that had historically been directed to municipalities? Like, is this money reaching the state but not municipalities, or is this money the state has that isn't reaching municipalities?
It's a little bit of A and a little bit of B, I believe. The state and federal finances are a little bit beyond my purview.
Okay.
But the state does get money both from taxes on state residents
Yes.
and from the federal government for transportation.
And when it comes from the federal government, it's not earmarked as being something that's intended for municipalities. It's just like, here's my, or is it already earmarked and the legislature's hands are tied? Or like,
So I believe some money is earmarked, some money from the federal government is earmarked for municipalities as passed through from the state, and some is not. So this would not affect the money that is already supposed to go to municipalities. It would say more of the money that it's at the state's discretion to either use on its own roads or pass through to the municipalities should go to the municipalities.
okay.
This is a surface transportation money, right? The
Yes,
formula-
that's how Wisconsin
formula
passes it
money.
through. Yeah.
There are allocations for transit and for transportation alternatives.
Yep.
Out of that pot, and the transportation alternatives, Wisconsin historically has transferred the maximum that they're allowed to out of transportation alternatives and into roads. I think transportation alternatives is 2%, and they take 1% and move it to roads, and transportation alternatives to biking, walking, and safety programs.
Safe routes to school, almost all of our big bike path projects are TAP projects.
Underpass.
Yeah.
But this is specifically around road maintenance and road construction.
Yeah, spend less money on the state highway system and give more of that to the municipalities for local roads.
Well, I mean, I understand that it's a zero-sum game, but I don't think in the resolution we're saying to spend less money on the state highway system, are we?
That's where it would come from.
I mean,
It's not saying that in the resolution, but it is inferred, yeah.
Okay.
Other questions or comments, opinions?
I support it. I think we spend too much money on highways.
Well, this would be more.
The state does.
Yes.
They expand highways instead
State
of
highways
maintaining our
versus
roads. Yeah, so
Yep.
I support us getting more of it.
Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion to recommend approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. On to discussion items, transit statistics. Ross.
All right, so these numbers, we've seen the 2025 numbers here before. So Metro provides City of Fitchburg with our transit statistics every quarter. These are uploaded by me to the Wisconsin DOT's transit management system to fulfill the city's reporting requirements for the PTAP grant. So basically this year we are getting $1.3 million out of the anticipated $2 million that we will need to fund our transit service. The spreadsheet that's on the screen has all of 2025's quarterly numbers and 2026 quarter one, which is the data we have now.
Can you tell me what the operating expenses line is for quarter one of 2026? I mean, I know it's 601, but why is that only filled in that column? Is that new data?
Just paratransit, right?
No, up on fixed routes.
So,
Well, it's
Oh, I
also
see.
on paratransit, I
Yeah.
see that now.
Got it.
yeah, so for PTAP, last year we were not required to submit full operating expenses number. That's a new requirement for
Okay.
this year.
Okay, and so the format and content of this table is really dictated by our reporting requirements.
Right.
Okay, so if we want to analyze different data, we would have to request it and hopefully they would provide it.
Which was my comments to you guys about, because you asked for comments in advance on, like, this to me is almost useless. All it says is we had about the same number of trips as we did a year ago, Q1. And it just looking at the first line. And like if we as the TTC wanted to discuss like, are the routes that we have currently selected, you know, helping our residents, and are they being used properly? Do we have stops at the right location? Which of the routes are the ones that are used the most? None of that information is available to us. And if you dig into what Madison has made available, it was a one-time snapshot from more than a year ago where they estimated the boardings on certain routes or certain stops, but there's no real-time data from Madison on boardings, even though they have the APC system now, so that they know who's getting on the bus and tapping their card or paying in some way. They know how many boardings happen at each stop. And they can say, well, we have to clean the data and there's delay and all the rest of that. But since we're talking about redoing the contract, it would be I would suggest that we would include a requirement that the information on APC counts, even if it's raw data, be provided to us on a monthly basis so that we can begin to look at which of our stops and which of our routes are most effective and being used most frequently. Because I don't know how you make any, like, what do we do with this?
So the point of this agenda item,
Yes.
I agree that you can't use this data to make decisions on individual stops or routes. But the point of this agenda item was that TTC wanted a review of this data quarterly
Yes.
when it was available to me. So if there's a future agenda item wanting to look at, you know, individual routes or stops, then I can definitely get that data from Metro.
Oh, you think you can get it? I know, like,
They've provided data in the past, yes.
like say for the last 12 months, monthly boardings up to May 2026.
Yes.
Or
So
the boardings in Fitchburg at each stop.
So at each stop, I believe they can provide now, yeah. In the past, that's been estimates, and I think with some of the staff turnover at Metro, they have not been as proactive about sending out that data. And I haven't really had a hard use for it, so I haven't been bugging them about getting it. But if that's something that this commission wants to see, I can reach out to them about it.
I would personally like to see it because I'd like to spend some time analyzing it, and this doesn't help me much in any way. From a financial perspective, it helps us understand our finances and like just trips, which I think trips really means boardings, right? But the word trips to me is a bit misleading, and I think it's actually boardings.
Well, assuming that nobody rides to the bus garage and stays overnight, it also means disembarking. So.
Right, but you're only counting.
Oh, by saying more trips in Fitchburg. Yes.
Yes.
I see what you're saying. There is a pretty big seasonality to our workload and maybe Metro's because of construction season. Is there a time of year that you would like to see that the most, or do you want? I understand that a long-term ideal would be to get the monthly datas every month.
That to me would be the way that I would phrase it in the renegotiation of our contract.
Yes.
That we should have available to us the monthly ridership data at the stop and route level from Madison Metro in a timely manner, like within 30 days of the end of each month.
Yeah, that's good. But to buckle down and have a committee work session on those data, are you thinking of any particular time you would feel like that would be? Because it would be best if we were to tackle the data when we start getting it instead of 6 or 12 months later.
Okay, so soon after we got the data, like 30 to 60 days afterwards. Let's say that we're in one of these meetings in the future and we're considering route extensions or relocating stops or whether that stop is really necessary or not. We can't answer that question at all. We can't answer whether a stop at that location is being used by anyone at all.
Yep.
And so
it would have helped with the Route D.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I
So
know Ross did give us that data though, when we had, like,
Yeah,
I
when
mean,
we
he
talked
does.
about Route D, I did give stop level data.
Yeah,
But was it current?
It was I believe it was an estimate based on the previous year average.
Because it
And also, I just want to say, like, we can get into future agenda items, like if we're looking at individual routes, but we're getting pretty far from like this agenda item, which is a review of this data.
Okay, yep.
I do note that looking at the revenue miles, we are down a little bit this quarter from the average from last year, and I'm guessing that would be that D change, because we haven't seen any other changes.
Right.
Well, they had a whole bunch of service, like, we're not running the bus on this, day or this route. or
Oh,
this
that's
time.
another
So we've-
And so every time.
We've actually only had a couple of missed routes this quarter. They put out,
In this quarter, okay, but
Oh,
this
that
is
was-
like
that was
January through March.
Fourth
right?
quarter.
yeah, that was fourth quarter last year, we had a
They
lot
had
of
the
that.
crisis.
Okay.
This year, they have put out press releases that say we may have to cancel service. They have not actually had to cancel that much
Got it.
service.
Okay.
Can I ask why paratransit like tripled?
That is a great question. I don't know the answer to that. It's being used more, I
It
guess
seems
is the
good.
only, yeah. That jumped out. to me
Tripled
as
from,
well.
Yeah,
From Q1,
from Q1.
last year.
yeah, but from Q4, revenue trips are a little bit down for paratransit,
And from Q3.
Yeah.
And even Q2.
so,
It's, as from Q2, it's on a downward trend.
yeah, it might be a better question might be, why was it so low in Q1 2025, honestly?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would wonder if it was, because it was so cold and crummy weather, I wonder if people just weren't going to the library or, or I guess not the library, terrible example, but going to other places in town.
And this
Was-
year was very warm.
Was there any major changes in the paratransit eligibility area over that time? When was the system reconfiguration?
August 24.
Okay.
So that's also why I didn't include data from further back, is because it's a different system.
I think they don't have APC on the paratransit buses, right? There's no.
They do not.
Town pay or anything, so this relies on driver counts.
So you have to, generally you call and schedule a paratransit ride, so they have office data.
They know how many, and they also are very good about recording no-shows.
Yes,
So
you
that
get,
You can get kicked out of the program.
yeah, if you call for the bus and then you don't board. Because they have to drive from whatever
Wherever
doctor's
they
office,
are.
they just drop somebody off at, over to whoever's house, and then back to the doctor's office or wherever you're going.
All right, any further discussion on that? Thank you, Ross. All right, the big opus for tonight is the TIA guidelines. So, staff report.
All right. So I've got a memo, I have a summary of this document in the memo. I'll kind of go through why this is coming up now, why I feel like we need TIA guidelines. For those listening, transportation or traffic impact analysis is TIA. So new developments in the city are often required to submit a transportation impact analysis to outline the impacts of the new traffic generated by that new development. This is common practice throughout the country and especially in Dane County where we're seeing a lot of growth in new development. These guidelines will give developers a better starting point and a clear outline of what information is required for each level of TIA, and these will make TIA reviews faster and more consistent for staff. These guidelines will also be accompanied by ordinance changes to require TIAs at all new developments and large building projects. So right now, our ordinance basically says new developments need to account for the traffic that they generate. We don't say they have to submit a TIA, but we basically make them submit a TIA because we won't prove their traffic fixes without actually seeing a report about them. So basically the ordinance changes will make that a lot more clear when and how you need to submit a TIA. These guidelines will not be part of that ordinance. It will be, basically you will need to have a TIA approved by city staff, and these guidelines will be posted on our website, but staff will have the ability to change them without having to go back to council or Board of Public Works or TTC. So summary of this document.
Before you get into the details, this will be a huge advantage because right now, Public Works staff has to basically get into the ring and negotiate with each developer about how much is enough. And now it will be cut and dried. And developers do not want their projects held up by missing information. So if it's written down that they need it, then they do it. Whereas if it's a negotiation about how much is enough, then their financial antennae start to quiver, and they say, well, if I only do this, then I don't need as much of my contingency. So this will be great for staff.
Yeah. So this document, all new developments will need a TIA. There's 4 levels of TIA depending on how many peak hour trips of the site generator the development will generate. So this table outlines each of those types of studies. On the next page, I've got kind of a, just for example's sake, so a site review, Inspiration at Swan Creek is basically the size of a site review that's right at that 50 peak hour trips, because a single family house is just under 1 peak hour trip. Small developments, so they increase the analysis area. You have to do bike and pedestrian level of service evaluation, and a few more other details. Yarmouth Crossing, which is the kind of strip mall just south of Walgreens where like Laredo's and Pizza Hut and the
Everything in between.
Yep, so that's a small development. A medium development between 100 and 499 peak hour trips. You get a larger analysis area. You have to look at a horizon year for your level of service analysis, so you don't get to just say, oh, when we finish building this is the amount of traffic. You have to look 10 years out in a medium development. A grocery store about the size of Pick and Save is a medium development. And then for a large development, bigger analysis area, you have to consider TDM measures, transportation demand management measures. A development the size of Jamestown Quarry is a large development. Motor vehicle level of service is really the main part of this. Every TIA we require, or any other municipality requires, looks at motor vehicle level of service. That's an industry standard calculation. Bike and pedestrian level of service is basically a customized scoring system that I took from the city of Middleton, who took it from the city of Charleston, who, as far as I've been able to find, kind of developed this scoring system methodology. For pedestrian level of service, we look at crossing distances, turning conflicts, pedestrian signal timing, corner radii, and crosswalk visibility. And then bike level of service is signal timing, turning conflicts, physical space for bikes, like bike lanes, traffic speeds, and then the crossing width is basically a lower priority than for a pedestrian, but it's still there for bike level of service. In existing neighborhoods, these guidelines would require traffic calming if the new development will increase the traffic in the existing neighborhood. And then also developers can get credits to reduce their trip generation numbers if they have good street design, sidewalks, bike paths, and transit amenities. This one is something almost all of our developers already take credit for, but in each TIA they kind of massage the percentages that they take off of their trips because they're close to a transit stop or they have a bike path or whatever it is. So these guidelines will have solid percentages that they can take if they meet these requirements. So I guess any questions on the summary or these guidelines in general? We can kind of get into the weeds after this.
On this concept of large developments in Jamestown Quarry, is the developer, for example, for Jamestown Quarry, a single entity at the point that this needs to be submitted and approved, because there's subsequently a Chick-fil-A and a car wash and apartments and whatever, but it's already accomplished by, it's supposed to be accomplished by the developer that proposes the entire land development.
Exactly.
If you had multiple adjacent properties that were owned by separate developers, but they were one after the other, like let's say that Jamestown Quarry was already somehow chopped up, but everybody decided to build something there at the same time, then it wouldn't be a large development, it would be a bunch of small developments. So
Correct.
it applies as long as you're starting with a large plot of land and you're planning to do the cutting up of that and selling off of or leasing certain areas yourself. But if it's a handful of properties that just happen to all go up at the same time, then it becomes a little bit, the transportation plan for each of those could be small, but the impact could be large.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so in that particular case, where if there were already different property owners and we don't have an existing TIA on the site, because a lot of times what happens is we'll get developments and land divisions and rezonings that happen, say, on in like the uptown area,
Right.
that will just sit for years. They're already subdivided and everything,
Right.
but we have a TIA from, I think that one's from 2012,
Okay.
that covers all those.
Mm-hmm.
So over there, we have not been requiring new TIAs because we have an existing one.
Well, even if.
But if they propose a different land use,
Okay.
then we require them to update the existing TIA.
Okay, so the TIA that's there specifies what intended land use there
Yep.
is for each of those properties.
Yep, so this would capture it at the land division stage is how I've written this ordinance.
Yeah, okay.
And then also, if there are, there's land divisions that have already happened that we don't have TIAs for, it would capture it at the building permit stage as well.
Okay.
So,
If there's like multifamily, does it just say multifamily or does it say number of units?
number of units. So that's kind of getting into the trip generation calculations, which are in Appendix B.
I just meant in terms of uptown, if like my property says multifamily and it doesn't say whether there's 10 families or
Oh, you mean
1,000
at the-
families right in that property,
Mhm.
does that, as long as it's still multifamily, do I have to do a new TIA?
If you are increasing the number of trips. So if you're increasing the number of units, then yes.
Okay. So
Or
the units,
if you're reducing them and you ask to say,
Yeah.
hey, we're doing a lot less units, can we build less road here?
Okay.
I'll probably say yes.
Is there a time frame that the TIAs are good for? Like the one you mentioned that's 2012, does it time out at a certain point if not?
So, no, but if there are issues that staff sees with those old TIAs, we would require a new one or an update. Like sometimes these, just as an example of something, these trip generation numbers sometimes do change. So if a land use, say the multifamily land use, got bumped up by even from 0.9 to 1 trip per day, that would be a huge trip difference that we would call out and require them to update.
If there were new uses, the manual gets updated from time to time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's why you subscribe.
Yeah. Technically, I'm on a 2-year-old version right now. They just came out with the 12th edition. I have a subscription for the 11th edition. So I got to get an extra $1,000 in the budget for the 12th edition.
So Ross, 2 questions then from me. When we look at peak hour trips as the metric here, this should be pretty easy for a developer to get a sense of whether or not they fall into a site review or a small development or medium based on the criteria that are laid out here below. Is that correct? So
Yes.
they can plan budget-wise
Mhm.
and timing-wise how much they should account for.
Yes,
So
so,
engineers can.
yeah, so for the goal of these guidelines is to be able to, for whoever, whatever, former farmer is selling their land or trying to develop a small site on their land, to be able to put together their own site review TIA from what's in this document. So they can go to the back, use those figures to multiply out, I have 30 single family homes I'm putting up here, multiply that by 0.9, I'm at whatever that is, 24 trips. I need to do a site review TIA, and then they would go through and say, okay, for the site review, I need a site plan, which needs to lay out where the driveways are, sorry, I'm getting to that point, existing roadway geometrics, and then the planning level capacity analysis, and site distance evaluation are like the main things they would need to lay out. And they can do that all from the appendices in this document. And you can figure out which study type you fall into with that same table, where you say, I've got 500 multifamily and 50,000 square feet of retail. I'll multiply that out. I'm a medium development, or whatever it is.
Okay.
So,
And then when we look at the second to last bullet point on the summary here, order traffic calming is required in existing neighborhoods if the new development will increase traffic, and if the new development, if certain thresholds are met. I guess, could you help me understand kind of what this looks like in practice? And I'm gonna shape this as I hear from Waterford Glen and Fahey Fields are fresh in my mind because of there's a couple projects that are proposed between Lacey and the extended Notre Dame. So what would that look like in that case? And for Fahey Fields, since that, Waterford Glen is 25-ish years old, I would say, I believe. Fahey Fields is much newer, and kind of Notre Dame was built to go through eventually. So how does that pre-planning work? Would there be more required in Waterford Glen versus in Fahey Fields because one of them was built newer and there's this general plan in mind versus 25 years ago you probably didn't have the specificity that we have now?
So we wouldn't require traffic calming by how old the development was or how good their TIA when they developed was. It would be determined by what streets we anticipate cut-through traffic on. So if it's a street in Waterford Glen, then they would need to put curb bump outs or whatever in this list of traffic calming measures, traffic circles, reduce the road width or whatever on that specific street in order to basically disincentivize those new trips from using that existing street that is not designed for them to use.
Can I ask Logan?
Yeah.
Is there a new development that you're thinking about that could be titled Waterford Glen? I understand that the new development is between Waterford Glen and the crossing.
Yes.
Okay. There's no other thing proposed right now, right?
Correct. It's the
Okay.
The extended Notre Dame, however we're calling it today. The Fahey single-family homes in there, and then a project on the Sam Cooke site at the corner of Lacey and Fahey that would take its access from those two, the stub of Notre Dame, and then through Waterford Glen.
Is that Irish 1855?
Irish 1855, and then the AY development, multifamily townhouse development.
Yes. Okay.
So I guess, in that case, the future land use map for the townhouse project is currently neighborhood mixed use and then low density residential. So Waterford Glen, the traffic there was built with that in mind. And then you go to Fahey Fields where the Notre Dame was always intended to go through. So I guess I'm doing a very poor job of explaining the conundrum that is inside my head here. But I guess was that street built with this future development in mind? I don't even know how. I need to articulate my thoughts.
There was
here.
a neighborhood plan
Yes.
that I chaired that laid out what those possible future land uses were. But there you just have, that's a bubble diagram. You do not have densities and trips and stuff like that. Fahey Glen, which is the collector that runs through the Waterford Glen neighborhood, was designed as a collector because it had to serve the neighborhoods to the south. We had a speed limit issue there that you'll recall. Notre Dame Drive is also going to be a collector that's going to connect down to Highfield Estates, whatever that thing is called.
That is the right name.
So I know Fahey Glen does have bump outs.
Yep.
And is purposely traffic calmed. And I would expect the same for Notre Dame Drive. So tell me the conundrum again.
Yeah. So I think Fahey Glen is a good example of what I would like to see elsewhere. I think that's a great model for elsewhere.
And this Fahey Glen is what I think of in my head when I'm thinking of streets with curb bump outs that work well.
Yes.
So we got them on Sparklestone. We have some on Research Park.
Yeah. But to that point then, that infrastructure is already in place. So there are new trips generated from these two developments that are proposed. What else, if those things are already in place and the neighborhood is already concerned, it says later on in here that there will be meeting, neighbor input into a review of the proposed traffic calming measures. If those are already in place, and in this case, again, as Steve just mentioned, Fahey Glen was designed with that in mind. So how do we kind of square that circle of, we already have this was already designed for this, but then we have folks saying we want more because there are additional trips here. But this was essentially overbuilt 25 years ago with this eventuality in mind.
So we wouldn't be going by resident complaints. So there's thresholds in this document. Traffic calming is required if traffic on a local street is would be greater than 800 vehicles per day after the new development, and if traffic on a local collector would be more than 2,000 vehicles per day. So I believe, Steve, you're correct that Fahey Glen is a local collector, or a minor collector might be a better phrase for me to use there, since that's the actual terminology we use. And I can double check this, but I don't think West Fahey Glen's not going to be anywhere close to 2,000 vehicles per day. There's also a speed component here that's very difficult to quantify in a TIA, but that's in there just basically in case we can predict that and want to curb speeding. So we'd be going by those metrics, and if traffic calming is already in place and it's not working, then we would look at other versions of these treatments. Like if the curb bump outs don't work, we could look at speed bumps, upstream and downstream from those curb bump outs. We can definitely piggyback a lot of these things.
Okay.
You can put mid-block bump outs at fire hydrants if you only have intersection bump outs like that. When I read it, I thought that the intersection with the neighborhood traffic management procedure was to provide some self-determination to the neighborhood as to whether they wanted these things.
Yes.
Whether they liked the program and whether they felt that it would improve their neighborhood. I didn't think that I didn't expect the development on the green space here to the right would cause the people who already live on the left to run a petition to get traffic calming proactively. Is that right?
Correct. So the developer would basically have to kick off the traffic management process, and we would use that format of neighborhood meetings and forming a traffic calming committee and all that kind of stuff that's laid out in the traffic management process to determine which of these options the existing neighborhood wants, if any. Because we also, I think, Steve, what you're kind of getting at is we don't want a developer going into an existing neighborhood, putting in a bunch of speed bumps, and then the people who live on that street don't want the speed bumps, but we just put them in because the developer was gonna kick them over this threshold.
I recall when the speed bumps or speed tables went in on Glacier Valley Road. I might have been mayor or alder at the time, and the resident complaint was they ruined a perfectly good road because they had to drive over these things wherever they went was over these speed bumps.
And these guidelines do clearly state a preference for horizontal traffic control versus vertical traffic control, because we get so many complaints about speed bumps, and we don't really get those with curb bump outs or traffic circles or that kind of thing.
Does the developer have access to the baseline traffic volume?
They generally have to do traffic counts.
They have to do their own count to get the starting point as a part of building this TIA.
Yep. If a developer reached out to me and asked for a traffic count, I would send them what we have and say, you can use this for planning purposes, but when you actually get into a TIA, you have to do your own count.
I note that there are situations where you can't really reduce the traffic counts because the land uses have to be served, but the traffic calming is still important because of speed control. So particularly, if you need a McKee Road divided 4-lane and to handle the traffic, you don't want that to become a dangerous road because the wide lanes invite speeding. So speed control is an important aspect of this, even if you can't affect the volume very much.
Yep, and that's into that next paragraph after the existing neighborhoods. There's also traffic calming requirements on proposed streets.
What page are you on?
I should have put page numbers in this document, and I didn't. I will be adding that. But in our packet, it's section 6.
Okay.
Traffic calming.
I see it.
Which is page 11.
Okay. I also didn't print this from the packet. I printed it from my Word doc, so I don't even have the packet numbers on it.
On the bicycle level of service, I'm very happy to see very often progressive planners complain that conservative planners use only motor vehicle LOS and nothing else. And as this document points out, that often works contrary to bicycle and pedestrian level of service. So I'm very happy to see both of those in there. I was wondering on the roadway space for bikes, I understand that you got this from someplace else, but I would give them even more points for a buffered bike lane. That would be 6 feet or more. That's on your appendix E.
Yeah.
Number.
Oh, there we go. D. Okay.
Yeah. Just a thought.
Yeah.
But, looking this over reminds me that I'm not an engineer, even though I like to talk like one sometimes. And I love the examples where people get to do their own coding. I'm sure that that's where your intern spent
Yes.
significant validation time.
So, if anyone's interested, these are based on these guidelines, these are our current bike and ped levels of service for our existing intersections. They're not very good yet.
Yeah.
So, based on these,
This might figure into the safety action plan.
Yes, I'm anticipating adjusting either the required level of service down a letter grade for each of those land uses I have it listed for, or changing like where you go from an A to a B, like that score.
I would like better infrastructure instead.
I agree. It's just it's tough for us as staff to require
stuff that's so much better than what we already have.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well.
And I think there's some of these intersections that having ridden my bike or walked through them, some of them are an F or an E, and some of them are a little bit better than that. So.
Did the intersections score for both crossing directions?
Yeah, so the way you go through this is every leg of the intersection, you score individually, and then you average those scores.
Oh, it's an average.
For an intersection score.
I was noticing when we were leading I went through twice in different directions. I went through across the Pork Chop Island on the Capital City Trail on Cyene Road, where you have to cross the slip lane. Did that one time, and then on another trip, I went through the similar situation at McCoy and M. And I've noticed that in one direction, two of the three times I went through those two intersections in different directions, it gave me the walk signal, the crosswalk go, for both legs. And I think one of the main objections to having to cross the signalized slip lane is going through the first one and then having to wait on the island for another different phase to go through. And Jerry Sherpa had posted a video of going through the MM one on his bike, and he went through both of them on the green walk, and there was no explanation and no text for that. I see what he's pointing out here.
Yeah.
And so I think that is an important usability feature on the signal timing.
Yep, we recently adjusted the M and McCoy pedestrian timing because it wasn't, basically one of the buttons wasn't working right, and you were getting more time in one direction but not enough time in the other direction to make it all the way across both the road and the slip lane. So we recently adjusted that. I think that's when Jerry took that video. It was like a few months ago. And his videos are definitely for other signals engineers and not for general consumption.
I'm a big fan. Other comments and suggestions and feedback for Ross?
I was just curious if I was a developer who worked in Verona and Middleton and Fitchburg and perhaps Monona, would I encounter pretty similar document guidelines in each of those municipalities?
If you were working in Middleton and Fitchburg, yes. This is heavily based on Middleton's, which is heavily based on the city of Charleston's. The other cities, no. There's a lot of variation on the level of detail that cities provide, and frankly, a lot of it is just down to the transportation or traffic engineer who gets tasked with reviewing them. A lot of cities defer to WSDOT's format. WSDOT has, I don't know how many pages, a lot more than this, for traffic impact analyses on their roads.
If
of them just defer to that.
If I was trying to decide whether to focus my development efforts in one city or another in Greater Dane County, would I consider what Fitchburg's doing a burden and avoid Fitchburg?
I don't think so. We already require almost all of what's in here besides the actual scoring system for the bike and ped stuff. But we already require most of the other stuff, which is frankly the more expensive part of it. The bike and ped stuff is like adjusting signal timings and putting up slightly different signal heads and stuff like that can get you a lot of points there. But having it laid out like this,
That would be a
will
plus
help
for
them
developers.
know on the front end the cost that they're gonna be getting into, rather than how we do these reviews right now, which is once they bring in a preliminary plat, sometimes this is the way it happens. Once they submit a preliminary plat, I'm saying, wait, this road setup doesn't work. And then they have to change a bunch of work they've already done.
Yeah.
Versus with this and the ordinance change associated with it, we'll be looking at that on the front end before they submit anything.
They'll see what's required, and they like that.
I do think some of Fitchburg's requirements are maybe a little more stringent than other, especially like more rural
That's what
cities.
why I was sort of surrounding Madison and avoiding Madison as a comparison, just because that's a different animal.
Yeah.
Bless you.
The biggest thing in here is that if a road is a level of service C right now or better, then you have to keep it at least a level of service C, which is an extremely standard metric that comes from WSDOT, and almost every other DOT that I know of uses level of service C as their minimum. And that's really where most of the cost comes in. So, and that's the same through, I think, every municipality in Dane County, honestly. In Madison, it's a little different because some of their roads are much worse than level of service C, and there's just nothing you can do with the roadway or the intersection to make it better. So.
And to that point as well, the thing I've heard when I've been to the housing conferences and whatnot is that time is money, and that's really the number one or one of the top things that the developers find beneficial when deciding whether to go to Fitchburg or Windsor or DeForest or Verona. And if we've clearly laid out guidelines from the beginning, that only helps with that time, because then they don't have to do redesigning and holding costs and everything like that, and interest costs.
Rework.
Yeah, and we're already known for being pretty speedy on that end within Dane County. So I would think this would, in my uneducated opinion, I think this would help us more than it would harm us. Even if we have slightly more stringent guidelines, knowing that up front,
It's clear.
makes it, it may even come out financially a wash, because even if they have to spend more money on that, they're spending less to the bank for the 3 months of extra interest on holding costs for the land that they already paid for.
Are you getting all the feedback you need, or?
Yeah. This is also going through Board of Public Works, Public Works Department review, and then also planning and economic development. So, it's not going to Bike and Ped. I updated Bike and Ped and said we'd be talking about it tonight, and if anyone was interested, they should attend.
Okay.
They were warned.
The list of land uses is just example, like if I had something that wasn't in the list, I could refer to the whole manual. To find my own thing.
Yeah, really the idea is if you have something that's not on this list, it's probably too complicated to just be doing based off of these guidelines, and you need to be a real traffic engineer and know how to do a TIA already. So. And if somebody was like, I want to build, I don't know what's not on here, but I want to build a single unit of that thing, then I
Sports
could
betting.
just give them an ITE code and a trip generation number for it.
Right.
If it really wasn't that
Oh, that's
complicated.
right, because you have a manual and they don't.
An outdated manual.
Yeah.
There's not very many changes. It's mostly just to get the city's extra $1,000 every 2 years.
Let's,
I will say, I thought that the pedestrian level of service example intersection,
It'd be horrible.
if that's the same, the LOS worksheet, is that worksheet for that intersection?
Yes, it is. There's a lot of stuff in the worksheet that's like, you know, the signal head design and countdown and stuff like that, that's not in this diagram, but all the widths and everything. Yes.
Because, I mean, crossing a 4 or 5 lane road, whichever way you'd be crossing this, I just found it amusing, perhaps, and a little bit like, oh, I don't know that I'd call it this from comfort of user, that this is a level B for pedestrian.
So a lot of its score comes in like having protected phases that don't conflict with the pedestrian crossing. So they're like restricting, like no right turn on red if pedestrians have a walk signal, and no left turns if pedestrians have a walk signal, and all this kind of stuff. Then they also, like the pedestrian walk speed, you get a decent amount of points for.
Notice that
for accounting for slower pedestrians.
to take the credit for the refuge island, you need 6 feet. And that's certainly true for bicycles, but when you give them head LOS scores for a smaller island where you don't really need 6 feet, you might need 4 foot for a stroller.
Yeah, so in some of the guidelines that I looked at, they did have like a middle level for a refuge island, and I took that out because I specifically wanted
6 foot.
6 foot.
Okay.
So
I think
it
that's
really, like, if you
excellent example of engineering
Yeah.
judgment.
if you go out and stand on a 4 foot island, there's really
Traffic's
not
very
much.
close.
Yeah, you can stand there and not get hit by a car, but not much more than that.
Don't put your arms out.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our quick reports. I guess common council then.
Sure, I have a few things to note here as I look through June 9th. And I'll try to do double duty with plan here since Alder Gerhard is not here. At council on Tuesday night, June 9th, we approved an ordinance and plan commission resolution to update the future land use map for a couple properties off of Ski Lane across from the VFW in Southdale, switching it from business general to medium high density residential. The developers come forward with some kind of a cottage court-esque style development. More to come on that, but that is in an area that's kind of right on a bus line off of Ski and Novation there. So it seems like a good use for residential from the council and the plan commission in that direction.
A question on that?
Yes.
Is the plan commission or council referring to the Southdale neighborhood plan that the city adopted but the town never did?
That's a good question.
Because what happened, of course, was that the town went through with all those storage units and stuff because they were greedy for any kind of tax base. And none of that would have been permitted under the neighborhood plan. The neighborhood plan envisioned a commuter rail stop like Northstone or McGaw and Uptown, and a commercial center and high rises near the highway.
So it's interesting because there's 3 lots, and the 2 that we approved this future land use map for are kind of 1 and 3, and 2 in the middle is an existing single family home that will stay a single family home. So it's residential immediately to north, it's residential in between, and then the church is immediately to kind of the northeast, to Doxa Church there. So it seems congruent with the current land uses.
Yeah, I just
there.
wondered if the council or the plan commission made any reference to our adopted neighborhood plan for that area.
I don't recall a verbal reference to that. Let's see what else from June 9th. We re-referred that future land use map change at Fahey, Glen, and Lacey that we kind of talked about earlier in this meeting back to Plan Commission. So that will be going back to plan and then back to council at the end of June. There was some changes to the number of units by quite a bit, but it was still, what's being proposed is still within that medium-high density residential category. We also got an update from the police department on Tuesday about some service modifications. There will be, as of last week, they have taken effect, some changes to responses to motor vehicle crashes. So crashes that, let's see. Police department will only respond to vehicle crashes involving roadway blockage, disabling damage, injury, or suspected impairment. So if you're getting a fender bender on Fish Hatchery and you're able to pull off, you can do your own crash report, essentially. Alder Jetzer asked if that would cause issues with our statistics and our data collection for crash statistics and severity, because now we're putting some of the onus on the citizen versus on the police department. That information is still captured at WISDOT, so Ross maybe could speak to this as well, or perhaps, I don't know if that's your area of expertise, but it would still be.
Only if they file a report.
Yes, as long as they file a report, it should still be represented in some way, shape, or form.
I think Bill's question would have been, what if they don't file a report?
Yes, that did, yeah.
Then they don't get any insurance money
Right.
either, so I think in theory, if you would call the police, you would file a report even if the police don't come. And if you weren't gonna call the police in the first place, then you probably weren't, then a report wouldn't have been filed anyway, and yeah.
And they will direct, dispatchers will direct folks to where to fill out that form. And it sounds like the police department can help with that if somebody is not comfortable filling out that form. But it's a pretty straightforward form, asking kind of who's involved in a brief narrative and that sort of thing. But anything of significance where there's an injury or somebody's driving drunk or significant damage, the police department would still respond to. So it's more akin to, I guess, what currently happens on private property. So if two people get in a fender bender, one's backing out at Target and the other one crashes into them, and there's no damage, it's the same type of self-report.
No injury.
Yes.
Probably damage.
Yeah.
Cars are very fragile.
Not disabling damage. I missed an adjective in there.
Okay.
But from what I understand, other communities, including Madison and Milwaukee, have done this.
I think that the citizens generally think of the Madison as a degraded level of service when Madison is providing so much, requiring so much self-reporting. And that's my first reaction to, I understand that, the police have to do what they can with their budget and staff, but I would say it's neutral in terms of level of service.
I will keep my comments brief because I got into them on Tuesday.
Okay.
Go watch FACTv. Yeah. But the other one related to vehicles and transportation adjacent is minor property thefts from vehicles will not be responded to either. So if you leave your car door unlocked and somebody comes in and steals the change out of your cup holder, they're not going to get involved with that. But if somebody's the vehicle itself is stolen, or the license plates are stolen, or a gun is stolen out of the vehicle, that would still warrant a police response. Any questions on any of those?
Since this is TTC and we're talking about what the police department will and won't do, was there a statement made about speed enforcement or other types of moving violations?
There are no changes as part of this package that related to speed enforcement or anything of that nature. Chief Morales did say that they are continually reviewing and reevaluating what that looks like, and alluded to the fact that there will be future changes, but the nature of them has not yet been determined. I made it clear that I hope that we have some heads up if there are more significant changes, because the changes that happened here, I found out about when they posted on Facebook while I was on vacation.
I was gonna say, that was a statement from the police department, not a request for the council to approve what they were doing, right?
Yes, so if it were to get to that level, I would expect that similar to what we had with the dispatch center changes, although that involved more budgets and things, I would seriously hope that that gets to at least a discussion level topic for us in here. If all of a sudden we're changing our speed enforcement or not responding unless there's 10 calls about speeding in this stretch. But more to come on that if and as those decisions are made. But at this point, the decisions have not been made about what further changes could look like.
Did they say if these decisions are because of a police officer shortage, or is it that they want to spend more time doing something else?
Both.
Okay.
So we are about a dozen officers short of what ideal staffing would be, and money in the budget is very tight, so it's not a problem that will be easily or immediately resolved. And the goal is to also prioritize those higher level incidences, domestic violence, and the shootings and the robberies and that sort of stuff, to cut down on some of those the most impactful and concerning types of crime.
Anything else from council?
That was all from Tuesday. Very quickly, on May 19th, we approved a resolution and plan commission resolution to amend the boundaries of TID District 17 to include more of the Jamestown Quarry development to help facilitate additional development in kind of that western commercial area, with some changes made at the request of Chair Arnold to add language about multi-use paths in addition to sidewalks. So that was approved. Just to clarify that multi-use paths are TID eligible expenses, not just sidewalks. One could have made the argument without that language in there that we still could have done it, but I appreciate, again, providing that upfront clarity so that we don't have to go back and fight over, is this an 8-foot sidewalk or a 10-foot multi-use path? So thank you, Steve, for those suggestions.
But no bicycle stations.
Baby steps, baby steps. All right, let's see.
How about Plan Commission?
I'm just looking through to see if there's anything else from our May 26th council meeting. And Plan Commission for June meets, I think, a week and a half from now. Otherwise, it's just a couple plats that we reapproved. Nothing that I expect will have a significant impact on our transportation network.
Questions for Logan? Okay, and that was also planning?
Sure.
Okay.
Bike and Ped, we went through some of the public works projects that impact the Bike and Ped network. There were just a few questions on like Fitchburg Road timing and the County Highway underpass. Those are kind of the major ones that are on Bike and Ped's radar right now. They discussed e-moto regulations. Another community had put out a nice video. So we are working with FACTv on a video of our own concerning e-motos and e-bikes and the differences there. Biking on sidewalks has been a topic for the last few months there. They've gotten closer to ordinance language allowing bikes on sidewalks, so that will go, it hasn't been through Bike and Ped for approval yet, but it will go through them for approval and then to council.
They approved kind of a term sheet.
Yeah.
And then we'll go to legal for drafting.
Yep.
Would that be all sidewalks or just in certain areas or
So
certain
they will-
sizes?
Okay, Roscoe.
In certain areas, so if a building abuts the sidewalk, it's not allowed, is the main part of it.
Okay.
Like, what's the proximity? Like what?
If there's concrete up to the door of the building.
Oh, okay.
So like
So
Terravesa.
Hatchery Hill.
Yeah,
right
Hatchery
there.
Hill.
And
Yeah.
if there's 6 inches of, I don't know, weeds, that's enough to. Sorry.
I don't know.
Okay.
So one of the
Yeah.
things we talked about was that generally residents of the city do not know that they're not allowed to bike on sidewalks.
Sure.
And that while we don't want pretextual policing and we don't want to have generally safe things like kids learning to bike on sidewalks to be technically illegal, really what we need to do is if there is a situation where people are riding bikes on sidewalks and endangering pedestrians and people coming out of building doors and stuff, we will put walk bikes like you see
A sign.
on a sign that like on Monroe Street by Knickerbocker, that strip area is a walk bike zone in the city of Madison. And in an area where we have a wide concrete sidewalk where people who are geeks about things might be reluctant but feel unsafe in the bike lane, think going down McKee Road underneath the Verona Road. We can paint a center line on the sidewalk to make it clear that it's for multi-use. And so those kind of interventions by streets crews, by posting signs or striping are really the things that will help people know what to do if there's some problem in practice.
Yeah, I think it's important to, the way I'm thinking of it is this ordinance is not actually going to change much as far as how many people bike on the sidewalks. Nobody's going to know that we changed this and because they don't know it's illegal right now.
Only the bike league will know.
Yeah. Otherwise, they talked about bike-friendly community redesignation and then promoting biking and walking events. So.
Yeah, with respect to bicycle-friendly community, we expire. Our four-year award expires next summer. So
we have to redo the application.
We need to reapply. I will share one thing I shared with that group, which is that some of you may know that Bike Fitchburg has been on a rampage recruiting bicycle-friendly businesses, and that we are claiming that we are 6th in the country. But the Bike League came out with the new awards about 2 weeks ago when we went from 35 to 36, because we also had 4 renewals. But they, for the first time, published a award status and the year that you got it. And so there are many, many of the 1,140 bicycle-friendly businesses in the country that are in grace period status.
and there was a tie for 10th, so that there's 11 on the national leaderboard. And among those 11, only Fitchburg and Orlando have all of theirs current. So when I re-ranked them, made a spreadsheet with just the current ones and re-ranked them, and we're first in the country. So we cannot be publicizing that because it will be undermining the bike league. But I did ask their staffer for comment. He says, yeah, we know. And some of the ones that are currently recognized as awardees but are in grace period got their awards in 2017. So they basically stopped expiring people during COVID. And now it's been long enough that they say we gotta, and they have another staffer. They increased their staff on this program by 50%. And so they are going back and telling these people that they're gonna expire. And so pretty soon we may be number one.
That might be a good way to describe it if you want to get people to re-up is, you're going to expire.
Well, one of the things we try to do is we try to maintain a relationship with all of our VFBs to get them to keep improving so they get a higher medal. And our 5 new awardees from a couple weeks ago were all silver. ProMega came in as silver at their first application. And we had 2 silvers renew and 2 bronze that were upgraded to silver. So that's our new standard. It's going to be at least silver. All right, so that's it for Bike and Ped. Anybody want to see anything in particular on a future agenda item? Well, if you change your mind later, let Ross and or I know.
I actually have, well, I don't know if this is this one or the next one.
You've
I
got
would
the
suggest-
TIA coming back.
Yes, I would request maybe that September be a meeting we cancel. I'll be on vacation. So I could get staff to cover if we don't want to cancel, but yeah.
I was going to suggest July, because I'm going to be on vacation. But I think that where I will be, we have worked it out. So I'll be remote, and I'll ask Gabriella to chair.
I will be gone in July too.
July, I think we'll have the TIA
Ordinance
yeah.
and final guidelines. Okay, we meet again, that will be July 9th. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all.